Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Files podcast. We're back. It's been over a year. We took a brief hiatus. Well, I guess that's a long hiatus. But it's your co-hosts, Brandon Deutsch and Graham Mona. We're here to provide you some great fantasy football analysis, sleepers, breakout stars. And we have a special guest today. Grant, tell us the special guest we have today.
This is my very, very good friend, Lucas Sweany. You can find him on, L. Sweany NFL Takes on Twitter.
Yeah, I think
everything.
Sween's NFL Takes would be my NFL Twitter.
There we go.
Yeah, so Lucas and I played baseball together at University of the Pacific. Now we are very knowledgeable about sports. I wasn't before, now I am. Lucas has always been knowledgeable. So we're going to talk some fantasy football. Lucas is one of the best, along with Brandon, with
and
analytics.
Don't sell yourself short.
No, listen,
too humble.
I'm more of the the eye test guy. These guys are going to give you the analytics, the stats, with obviously the regular analysis too. But it's good to have Lucas on here. This is a long time coming. I've been wanting to have Lucas on here for a while, so it's good to have him on. So
yeah, fantastic to have you, Lucas. And I really wanted to start with at the top of the draft board. A lot of people are talking about this is a weird year where people are kind of unsure who they're drafting one or positionally who's going each. Yeah, I mean, but last year I think it was clear most people took Jonathan Taylor or Christian McCaffrey. This year there's a lot of wide receiver hype, which personally, in how many years have been playing fantasy football, all of us, wide receivers going number one never used to be a thing, right? And now we're kind of going into this certain era where Justin Jefferson's being talked about or Jamar Chase. Let me throw some stats out there really quick. The wide receiver one to finish as the wide receiver one hasn't finished as the wide receiver one the year before in 9 out of the last 10 years.
Jeez.
Pretty much. Kupp 2 years ago got hurt the following year. Jefferson last year, unlikely, although he could be the guy to do it, to finish number one this year.
He's got to stay healthy.
359 fantasy points. The thing is, Kupp had this electric year, and you can speak on this too, Lucas, because did you have Kupp on your teams a few years back?
No, I mean, unfortunately, I didn't. I was never really a big Cup guy. I was in the Robert Woods situation. I thought Woods was going to be the guy.
Because all the stats went to Robert Woods, and Kupp was like, yeah, he's good. Yeah. He's a slot guy. And this guy picked him in the 7th round, won the league easy that year in our league a few years back. But yeah, he ended up finishing with 439 fantasy points, one of the highest.
By the way, there's no bias there. As a Rams fan, there's no bias.
No, it was just a good pick, 7th round pick. Everyone thought he'd be the wide receiver 2 with some upside. But yeah, he ended up having one of the best seasons in fantasy football, PPR history. We're going to primarily talk PPR. I don't know, Lucas, but you primarily play PPR as well.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't played Standard in forever, so it's weird now.
I hate Standard. Obviously, if you're playing Standard and you're listening to this, Nick Chubb, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, guys like that provide a little more value. PPR, you got to look at the whole shebang. That's why we're going to get into some Jahmyr Gibbs stuff. We're going to get into, Bijan Robinson's impact right away. But first off, Lucas, I want to hear your stuff. Since we have a guest, we're going to be nice. We're going to let the guest go first. Who are your top 5, let's just say, players overall that you would draft at the 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 position before we go into each position?
Okay.
As of right now, I know it's subject to change, right?
I actually do have 1-1 in one of my leagues this year. So we'll see what I'm going to do. I think this is a crazy one. I mean, it's probably not that crazy. People are talking about him there, but I think I'm kind of leaning towards Kelsey at 1-1 right now. I think that the advantage that the clear, easy tight end 1 gives you over an average replacement level tight end is just huge. It's a huge difference between it's so much bigger than the difference between the wide receiver 1 to wide receiver 12. Justin Jefferson to I don't know, maybe CeeDee Lamb, AJ Brown, I feel is probably that receiver 12. That's not as much of a difference as Travis Kelce is to whoever the tight end 12 is, Evan Ingram maybe. So I would probably go Kelce at 1-1 right now. And then it's that group of receivers, probably Jefferson, Jamar Chase, maybe Cooper Kupp. And then whoever you got as your RB1, whether it's McCaffrey, Eckler, Bijan, one of those 3 probably at 5. So.
That makes sense, and that actually I've heard that a lot more recently. And some guy asked me today on my TikTok live, should I take Kelce 1-1? And I have a different take on it only because I think he's usually available 1-5 1.6 is usually where he goes in 10, in most leagues. And I know DeAndre Hopkins signed with the Titans, but I love Chigoziem Okonkwo late. Again, that's a risk. You have a point, Lucas. I mean, you get Kelsey, and I know he's 34, but this is at least going to be a dominant season for him this year.
I don't care about age with Kelsey.
Of course. And he has Mahomes, and
Right.
he could finish as a top 10 fantasy player overall. And you have the tight end position locked up. I like Mark Andrews where he's going right now. I think it's in like round 4. He doesn't like Mark Andrews.
Well, no, I did the year before last because he was like one of my best players, and then last year.
But there's reasons.
When Lamar Jackson, I know there's reasons, but when Lamar Jackson went down,
he was terrible.
He went all the way down.
But if Lamar Jackson is healthy, I mean, it's important to know Mark Andrews still last year was averaging 21 fantasy points per game. So he was the tight end too. And then all this TJ Hawkinson hype, which we'll get into, like I'm taking Andrews over him any day. But that's always a great selection, Lucas, with Kelsey 1. I'm huge in the McCaffrey train. I know you didn't have him. I mean, perhaps maybe at that 5 position. I'll start off with who I would take 1-1, and I think it's Christian McCaffrey. I get the Travis Kelce argument. I get the Justin Jefferson argument. Jamar Chase, a lot of people love. For me, the thing is with McCaffrey, I know he's still 27. He's still in his physical prime. Yes, he did have a lot of usage last year. He's been injury prone. Those are risks, but you don't win fantasy leagues without taking risks, straight up. And that's just something you have to roll the dice on. He would have been the RB1. He would have blown Austin Eckler out of the water if he played the whole year in San Francisco last year. Obviously, he played in Carolina, that anemic offense the first few weeks. No offense to Carolina, but, I mean, it was pretty bad.
Well, the Rams beat him last year. That'll just tell you.
The Rams beat a few teams early on. They beat a few teams early on.
Oh, come on. Give me a break. I know. We'll get into that in our full football pod.
I actually think they're going to provide some good value. They'll win 8 or 9 games this year, more than people think. They're not going to win 6 or 7. But, yeah.
So you have him over Eckler? Because
absolutely. And here's why. Here's why. I love Eckler. Don't get me wrong. Kellen Moore's coming in. We don't know how that's going to. Obviously, Eckler's still going to be.
I think it'll improve a lot.
I mean, he could improve. But you have to, like I said with the wide receiver 1, the running back 1, and this, I think McCaffrey's the anomaly, perhaps Eckler as well, but the running back 1 has been age 25 and younger 9 out of the last 10 seasons as well. So you're looking at guys like Jonathan Taylor as a bounce back year.
Really?
Bijan Robinson. We'll get into that. And McCaffrey doesn't fit that mold, right? And neither does Eckler because they're getting older. But I think they're the anomalies where in PPR leagues, they're still going to get a ton of pass catching. The reason why I love McCaffrey at 1 is because of his versatility, and he's a touchdown machine. And that offense, I know they have a lot of weapons. Ayuk's going to get his. I don't know, Debo might even get his a little bit. But I want an elite running back with my first pick just because I think the wide receivers are so deep this year. And I guess that could be an argument with the running backs too, because you could get Pollard in the 2nd round, and that's why you could take a wide receiver in round 1. So I have McCaffrey 1-1. 2, I have Jefferson. I know he could become the first guy, one of the only guys to repeat as the wide receiver 1. 3 is where it gets tough because I do think Tyreek Hill is getting a little disrespected and I think you could warrant selecting him over Kupp and Chase. And for this reason, now I wouldn't have him at my 3, but I have him at my 5, 6, 7, like in that range. But he was the wide receiver 2 last year, and Tyreek Hill's missed 1 game over the past 2 years. So if you want safety, if you want a guy who's going to put up points.
Get him on the Clippers.
Get him on the Clipper. That's a good point. He could probably play for you guys, too. He's fast. He's still going to be in his age 29 season, right? He's still elite. I think that's a guy that should be considered as the wide receiver 2, but I would have Chase, then Eckler, and then Kupp, Kelsey 6. So I'll add in the 6th for Kelsey. I just think Kupp has been disrespected right now, too. Even when he was healthy last year, he was pushing Jefferson for the number 1 spot. And I saw a game against the 49ers. And, Lucas, I don't know if you watched this game, but the 49ers were drilling them. And he still had 16, receptions for 148 yards. And Stafford might have had 220 yards the whole game, and most of them were to Kupp. So when I think about that, if Kupp and Stafford are healthy, Kupp is going to finish as a top 5 wide receiver. Those are my top 6.
I love it. Lucas, I know that we got your number 1. I would like to see what you had to think about his picks? Because I know
Yeah.
you didn't have McCaffrey in your initial, but I know that you're very high on him. I just
We
want
could have had him at 5. He said it's a mix of those
Yeah,
guys.
I like McCaffrey a lot too. I've always been kind of like the hero RB strategy guy where I take a running back with my first pick. I mean, it just seems like the safest pick, to go running back high because you always need good running backs to have a good fantasy team, But I feel like that's probably the position that I'm best at evaluating, I think, when it comes to fantasy football. So I've always been able to find some pretty good running backs like in the later rounds. But I still always have taken the shots on the running backs early, and then I just end up with a ton of stud running backs and no tight ends. And that's been the problem. That's why I think I'm going Kelsey this year, is because I've just every year I try to go late tight end. I go, like Cole Kmet last year. I was thinking Cole Kmet looks good. David Njoku. And Njoku did end up being good, but last year, what happened to me, he got like one target in week 1, and I just said, nope, you're out of here. I'm done with the Njoku hype train, and then he ended up popping off. So I wish I would have stuck with him there. But yeah, I mean, I love McCaffrey a lot. I think he's a great running back. I agree with a lot of what you said. My only problem with him is the usage that Elijah Mitchell had down the stretch. I think that Kyle Shanahan really didn't. I mean, and it's fair, as the head coach of the team, you want to try to keep your guys healthy, so you might scale back a little bit on the usage of your studs. And with so many mouths to feed there, they can do it. They have a lot of good players, so they can afford to not give McCaffrey the ball as much. And that's just the one thing that I'm a little worried with him. Worried that he may not get like the massive volume that he's gotten with the Panthers. And he got a lot of it last year too when he went to the Niners, but a lot of that was when Mitchell was hurt, I think. But yeah, the receivers you had, love those guys. Tyreek Hill, he's a stud. I love Tua. I think Tua's one of the best quarterbacks in the league, honestly. So I think with Tyreek Hill playing the full season, he'll pop off.
That is a very hot take, because a lot of people are saying, oh, well, his career was over. Oh, well, he didn't have it even when he was healthy. And when you surround a guy with weapons like Tyreek, I mean, they were
Waddle.
Waddle too. They were rolling like they were one of the best teams in the league.
Yeah.
And Lucas has got
That's a great point. That's a great point, because I do think Tua is disrespected. I think he's a good late round pick. The reason why I have reservations on Tua as a fantasy quarterback is the health. Like if he's healthy, he's great. But like he also could get another concussion and be forced to retire at any time.
I think the Dolphins are very formidable, and the guys surrounding that offense, all the guys in the other part of that offense are going to benefit from that. I think they're going to have a really good year. Now, I'm not going to say they're going to be like 14 wins, but I think that all these guys fantasy-wise are going to get theirs, like Lucas said.
Yeah, and for sure. And we have to remember, too, Lucas brings up a great point about Tua not only being a great quarterback, he's an elite fantasy quarterback, too. And the guys, when Waddle is out there, Tyreek, it really doesn't matter who's playing quarterback, he's going to get the targets.
Well,
but
last
when
year
Waddle,
you could have got Waddle for like first-round value.
Well, what did I say last year? You tell him about my great take? I said, people called me crazy. I said, last year Waddle is going to have a Justin Jefferson type of ascension. And it wasn't, maybe not quite there, but I knew he was going in round 3, 4 last year, and I said, this guy's a second round pick. And he ended up finishing as a wide receiver 7. Again, I think he finishes as a top 5 wide receiver if Tua stays healthy the whole year, because his touchdown efficiency and his route running efficiency when Tua's there and Tua getting him the ball was elite. And you could make the argument perhaps that there's more value in selecting Waddle at 16, 17 than Tyreek at 5, 6. Even though I think there's certainly an argument if Tua stays healthy. Grant, what are your top 5 if you had to guess right now?
It's so tough for me. I don't think I'd go Kelsey. Well, I mean, depends, because I'm in a keepers league, so I'm probably going to keep Mark Andrews, so I probably wouldn't pick Kelsey 1. But I understand it. McCaffrey and Eckler, for me, are kind of neck and neck. Lucas brought up a good point that I didn't even realize about the Elijah Mitchell thing.
Yeah, it is a great point.
When he went down, that's where a lot of his production came about, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't really take that into account. I think that's a good point to where I would maybe put Eckler above him, because look, Eckler, how many touchdowns did he have last year?
A lot.
I don't know if you know off the top.
A lot.
He had a lot. It was like one of the most by a running back, I don't know if ever, or a long time.
Most of that was in like week 4 through like 9.
Right.
But yeah.
But you brought up a good point very early on about Kellen Moore. I think that a lot of the issue with the Chargers last year was Joe Lombardi. And I think Kellen Moore is going to change the dynamic of that offense, and it is definitely going to pay dividends, not just for Eckler, but for
Herbert.
Keenan Allen.
Herbert, too.
Yeah, for Mike Williams, and for Justin Herbert. Because I don't know if you guys remember, but Justin Herbert, I'm pretty sure we'll get into quarterbacks.
Yeah.
But Justin Herbert really had a tough stretch in the middle. I don't know if it was the middle or the end of the year where he just did not look like himself after that rib injury. I think that Austin Eckler can have. First of all, he's going to be going into a contract year. This is technically a contract year for him. And I know running backs are not getting paid right now, but I think he's going to be pretty motivated to get a lot of fantasy value. I think that, I don't know how you guys feel about Jonathan Taylor, because he was 1-1 last year. Like, he was like everybody's unanimous 1-1. And I don't see it. I don't see it with Jonathan Taylor. I know you're very high on him.
There's
a lot of people that are putting Jonathan Taylor in their top 5 still.
Well,
I just don't understand.
my favorite running backs overall this season, and we can go.
Obviously, I love Justin Jefferson. I love all the
Well,
favorites.
I want to go into the.
There's nothing like out of the box that I'm going to pick.
I think this is a great segue to our 5 breakout guys who we think, and they can even be not for you. And I'm not going to put him on there too. But I do think, I just want to say this quick about Taylor, is because I do think he has a chance to finish as the RB1. Because last year he dealt with injuries. It was a tumultuous season in Indianapolis. He was elite 2 years ago, and he's still 24 years old. He fits the mold of the RB1 finish, is usually 25 years or younger. So I'm just saying it's a possibility. I'm higher on Derrick Henry than him, barely, and I know a lot of people are not high on Derrick Henry, and I think this is why I'm still high on Derrick Henry. I actually think his value, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lucas, I think his value increased when DeAndre Hopkins signed, because it's not a one-dimensional offense anymore, in my opinion. Mike Vrabel's never been like a guy that is gonna be creative like Kyle Shanahan, like he's a run up the middle, run up the gut, like old SEC type of guy. But Hopkins, even in man coverage, you say, oh, they're going to stack the box because he'll be in man coverage with DeAndre Hopkins. I don't care if Henry gets less snaps. That's good for him, and that's kind of why I still have McCaffrey one, because I don't care if Elijah Mitchell gets 10 or 11 carries. I want McCaffrey to get 15 or 16 minimum.
McCaffrey's such a good pass-catching back.
I don't want him to get 20 carries is my point, why I have McCaffrey first. I think Mitchell benefits McCaffrey is my counterpoint to that. And 2, I think the Hopkins signing benefits Derrick Henry, because then this is a guy you can keep fresh who's still in probably the final year of his prime. What are your thoughts, Lucas?
Yeah, I don't hate that take at all. I think that D-Hop probably does open up the run game a little bit for Derrick Henry, takes a couple of defenders out of the box, probably at least one. The biggest thing that I like for Derrick Henry is the Titans' 11th overall pick this year. They selected Peter Skoronski from Northwestern, the tackle, that is now going to be converted to guard, I believe he's going to play. Dude was the best offensive lineman in the draft, I think. I think this guy is going to have a Quentin Nelson-like impact, like the impact that he had with the Colts and helping their run game. I think that he can easily do that for the Titans. This guy's a stud, and I think that he's going to prolong Derrick Henry's career, to be honest. As long as Henry can stay healthy, I think that he'll give him another year or so of prime, So I like Henry a lot.
You're right. That's a great point. I was so high on Skoronski, and I talked to evaluators when I was, covering the draft that were saying Skoronski's an all-pro tackle and an all-pro guard. It doesn't matter where you put him at. He's that talented. I liked him more than Paris Johnson, who obviously was drafted a bit higher. But look, I agree with you there, and I just think too, if you're so scared about Derrick Henry being old and whatever quote, I mean, he's possibly a once in a generational running back with his build. Have we ever seen a guy that big at 245, 6'3" playing running back? Like, first off, that's my first point. How ripped and what a specimen physically he is, which should be able to, like LeBron James, prolong his career, even in a sport like this. Second thing, if you're so scared about Henry's injury, handcuff Tyjae Spears, who I really love from Tulane. That was an excellent pick. I think he's one of the more talented running backs, one of the more disrespected running backs in the draft. And I do think he's going to take the reins eventually. But it's not this year. But I'm saying if people are so worried about Derrick Henry getting hurt, because there is a possibility, of course. He missed 2 games last year. Derrick Henry's so good, he missed 2 games last year. Didn't have as much of an impact catching the football as much as Saquon, Eckler, or McCaffrey, obviously, and still finished as the RB4.
That's probably why he's so low.
He missed 2 games and finished as the RB4. And he's going to get 2 games against the Texans again, right, Lucas? Those are free 40 fantasy point games. So that's my take. That's why I think his value now, he's so valuable at pick 11, 12, 13, 14. I feel like that's like an elite RB1 you can get that could very well finish as a top 5 fantasy player. Now, I wanted to go into the breakout stars because a little side note. I know we don't have much time here. I want to keep this under 40 minutes. But I wanted to talk about my 5 breakout guys. And I guess I'll go second. I want to hear Lucas's first because I've been pretty dead set on mine for a while. But let's hear Lucas's. And they can be anybody. It can be guys like a guy that can take a leap, like a Garrett Wilson can even be a breakout. You know, like Sam Howell. Jesus Christ.
What?
Riverboat Ron coaching him.
I don't care. I like Sam Howell.
Sam Howell got Eric Bieniemy as his OC, so that's exciting.
We all know that Eric Bieniemy wasn't doing jack in Kansas City. We know who's doing the play calls in Kansas City.
Sorry to interject with that hot take.
Sorry, we know Andy Reid's the best play caller in the NFL. Okay. Come on.
All right, let me give. I have like 7 sleepers, and I'm going to talk like more in depth about 2 of these guys because I want to say a lot about all these guys, but I know we don't have the time for it. So first of all, I didn't pick any tight ends. Like I said earlier, I'm not a good tight end guy. Just got to get lucky there, really, or draft Travis Kelce. But at QB, I picked Tua. He's going off the board at QB 11. And to be honest, I think he's better than the QB 11. I think that he, could be a top 5 or 6 fantasy quarterback if he stays healthy, just with the weapons he has, Running backs wise, I got Kendre Miller, the rookie for the Saints. I got Zach Charbonnet and Rashad Penny. Rashad Penny is a guy that I'm going to go in depth on. I want to talk a lot about him.
I love Rashad Penny.
Yeah.
Behind that Eagles line, give me that first in yards per carry.
Yeah, he's a beast. The wide receivers I have Treylon Burks, Sky Moore, and Nico Collins. And I want to talk about Nico Collins. So
great minds think alike. I'm just listening to you, and I'm like, damn, I like Nico Collins too, and Charbonnet and all those guys.
So I'll open up on Penny here. So Penny right now, most of my ADP I took from Sleeper. So Sleeper ADP, he's going at 102, which would be the 9-6. So around mid 9th round, early 9th round even. And he's going around guys like Brian Robinson, Jamal Williams, and Samaje Perine. And I'm just going to make the case against those 3 really quick. Brian Robinson, I just, he's going to have a role, but he's not very efficient, I don't think. And it's not a great offense also. It could be potentially, but he's not going to get any catches, Jamal Williams got money from the Saints, had a bunch of touchdowns last year. I don't think he's a good running back. I think that there is potential, and this might be a hot take, but there is potential that he gets cut. Just because I think Kendre Miller and Alvin Kamara are both just much more talented than he is, and you can't pay a 3rd-string running back $4 million a year. That's way too much to be giving a 3rd-string running back. And then Samaje Perine, dude's never really been a great running back. He's been a good solid backup running back, and he goes to a situation now with the Broncos where there's uncertainty with Javonte Williams. Is he going to play at all this year? His injury was really bad, so. Who knows? But I can't see Perine being a bell cow back, So with Penny, he averaged 10.4 points per game last year. He was the RB 33 in 5 games maybe he was healthy for. I looked at this stat earlier. In games where Rashad Penny gets 10 attempts or more, he's averaged 16 carries a game in those games for 109 yards and 0.89 touchdowns, which goes for 18.1 fantasy points per game. When he gets 10 carries, 18.1 points per game is the average. Guy is so good. He had 3 of those games last year in 2022, and he had 6 of them in 2021. He had 6.1 yards per carry last year, ranked number 1 among all running backs with a minimum of 50 attempts. He was RB1 in yards after contact per attempt, averaging 4.23. 0.23 missed tackles forced per attempt, which was the RB13, 0.18 explosive run rate, which was RB2. So that's runs of 10 yards or more. 18% of his runs went for 10 yards or more. And then 3.79 yards created per touch last year, which would have been RB6. So you put that, who was in the Seahawks O-line last year, which really wasn't that good. Seahawks offensive line was not great run blocking. Kenneth Walker struggled, especially on the goal line with that offensive line. You move that to the Eagles with their offensive line, like Brandon mentioned earlier.
Yep.
I can't see a world where Penny is not getting the meaningful carries and DeAndre Swift is getting them, Like, sure, Penny's never going to be a receiving back. Like, he'll never be on the field on third down unless it's 3rd and inches or 3rd and goal. And even then, Jalen Hurts might be taking those carries, with the little QB push. But, I mean, Penny with the Eagles is just exciting. But the thing with him is you got to watch out for the injuries that happen frequently for him. So I don't know, you take him in the 9th round maybe, and then he pops off a couple weeks and then you trade him and profit.
Yeah, I mean, that's an excellent point. And all the stats you brought up, I read earlier about Penny as well, and that's why I've been high on him.
I picked him up like late last year on waivers, and until he got hurt, he was like one of my best players.
Yeah, I mean, it was
that
I think that was 2 years ago. 21 probably.
Whatever.
Yeah, that would have been 21.
I've always been high on him.
Oh yeah, no,
Always
for
been.
sure. I mean, once Chris Carson retired or whatever, and he came in and he dominated, for Seattle and stuff. I mean, first in yards per carry, of course, like absolute sleeper. Again, there is the downside. Like, okay, he's in a timeshare with DeAndre Swift and. But you could think of best case scenario. Look at Javonte Williams, his rookie year with Melvin Gordon, and I mean Rashad Penny could have a similar impact. Those are similar backs if you kind of look at their explosive numbers. Very explosive backs, break a lot of tackles, a lot of fantasy points per touch when they are very healthy, and that's why I agree. I like Penny, but my guys I'm going to go into, and I like Miller too as well, and I love the Saints takes. I like Kamara late too, like. Depending on how much he gets suspended, like I can't imagine it's more than 6 to 8 games. Yeah, I can't imagine he's gonna get suspended more than 6 games, right? Like, so I think that's a great 8th round pick, 9th round pick. My breakout guys, I'm gonna go with a wide receiver first, Brandon Ayuk. A lot of people said last year was his breakout. I said that too, and it was. But I think he can be even better, even in a stacked offense. And if you just look at his target share in the red zone, it was top 10 among wide receivers. And that didn't matter who was at quarterback. I think he's better with Brock Purdy at quarterback. More of a pocket passer. Lance likes to, how do I say this? Extend plays a little too much. I feel like he goes away from the game plan a little bit too much. Like he goes through his reads and he makes a decision
thing with him is just the uncertainty at quarterback. Like it drastically changes from Brock Purdy to Trey.
Oh, absolutely. And so does McCaffrey's production, by the way.
Right.
Because if Lance isn't at quarterback, he's going to have some design runs. There's going to be, he's not as accurate as Brock Purdy.
Less checkdowns with a running quarterback too, probably.
Exactly. But Kyle Shanahan does not know. Trust me, I know as a diehard 49ers fan. He does not know how to coach, dual threat quarterbacks, which is why he's going to roll with Brock Purdy as soon as he can. He does not know how to coach. He got Lance injured last year, but it's a whole different story. What I will go into is Ayuk. Wide receiver 15 last year on an offense with Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, and Brock Purdy. And by the way, you look at the 229 fantasy points in PPR, 8 of which are touchdowns. There's serious, he's going to have weeks where he's going to have 6 fantasy points. That's just how it is in the San Francisco offense. You're going to get that with Kittle. You're going to get that with Deebo. You could even get it with Christian every once in a while. But he's going to have those 32 fantasy point games. And I think we're going to see more of those this year. I think the Niners offense, they have a whole offseason together, training again. I think the wide receivers, when they go from year 2 to 3 and 3 to 4, they take steps. And I think Ayuk's one of those elite guys with his wingspan and his ability to his route running, get space. I think he's a guy that could easily finish as not a top 10 wide receiver, but certainly a top 15 wide receiver yet again. And right now his average draft position, I don't know what it is on Sleeper, but Fantasy Pros, it's about 75 or something like that. So you get him in round 7, 69. I've seen it as high as. You get him in round 7 as your flex option. I think that's an elite flex option. It won me a lot of games last year when Lamar went down with an injury, and I had limited quarterback production. I think the second guy is Alexander Mattinson. I love Mattinson. I don't know how he's average draft position is 55, 60, 65, 70. Without Dalvin Cook, if we look at the last couple years, he had very similar production when he was put into the starting role. Again, we don't know where Cook's going to sign. We don't know how Mattinson's going to be utilized. But Dalvin Cook finishes the RB11 last year, and I'm sorry, Dalvin Cook lost a step last year. You evaluate running backs, you've seen it.
Yeah, I agree.
think Mattinson's kind of explosive. I think he's kind of underrated, and I think it's more about the value. Will he finish as a top 5 back? No. But he has the ability to finish as a top 10 running back. You get him in round 5, 6, 7. That's elite value.
Well,
You want to add something?
Yeah, I just want to add his stats. So in the last 5 games where he started and Cook was sidelined, Madison was 90.2 rushing yards, 42.4 receiving yards, 4.4 receptions, and 1 touchdown. So his half PPR weekly fantasy finishes were RB3, RB7, RB9,
Yeah.
RB5, and RB13.
I mean, I'm
That
drafting
is
him in every draft. Draft, he's my RB2. That's why my strategy, if I pick McCaffrey 1, I could be fine drafting Jefferson 1 because then I just pick my next guy and then Alexander Madison. And the next guy is Breece Hall. And here's why. I know we got to see how he recovers from the injury. He's the best running back in the NFL when he's healthy, in my opinion. I think he can get to that level. He was first in fantasy points per touch last season with Zach Wilson at quarterback. So now Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, God.
That's just the first thing. He showed a lot of. This was in an offense that was anemic at times. Saleh is a great defensive coach. Trust me, I know. He was the Niners defensive coordinator, but Breece Hall was single-handedly producing for that offense at times. Part of the reason why I got hurt, and that's important. It's a tough injury to come back from and contribute right away. But his ADP is 20, 21, 22. That's a guy under 25. My sleeper, I think he could finish as the RB1 if he starts week 1. I really do. And just you look at the fantasy points per touch. He even got some pass catching. He's explosive. I loved him in college. I don't know. That's another guy. I'm always drafting him in round 2. And that goes into my 4th guy. These are kind of weird breakouts because, Lucas had more later round guys, and I can get into those. But I am so high on Travis Etienne Jr., and I know a lot of people hate.
You were high on him last year.
And I was right. It turned out they finally let him play. This guy was, if you had college fantasy football, would have been probably the greatest college fantasy football player of all time since Christian McCaffrey, at least. Since Christian McCaffrey. His pass catching was elite. By the way, you can look at all the advanced stats. Some of it doesn't like Travis Etienne, but when he started, he was getting all these fantasy points, 17, 24, 27, 14, but he was very unlucky with touchdown production. He dropped a couple of touchdown passes. There were some plays behind his offensive line that they didn't really help him out where he could have gotten touchdowns. I still think he's extremely explosive. He's under 25. He fits that mold. And everyone's saying Tank Bigsby's going to take away his production. They don't know what the heck they're talking about. Tank Bigsby's good, but Travis Etienne, when started last year, was an RB7.
He was so good.
He was great.
Yeah.
So I think he can easily finish as a top 5 running back. You can get him at ADP 21, 22. There is some risk, of course, because he's a very skinny running back. That helps with pass catching. It helps with him being explosive. But he could also get hurt. There's a lot that can go wrong with these skinnier running backs, as we've seen recently. So that's my 3rd guy. Now I'll go more into the later rounds. I don't know anymore because I was going to say Jordan Addison, but he did go 145 miles per hour in a 55. But if you just look at – so I'll go KJ Osborne as teammate.
Let's just hypothetically think this is before that.
Let's hypothetically think. If it was before it, Jordan Addison I'm drafting every time in the 8th, 9th round. 107 targets vacated by Adam Thielen. KJ Osborne's also another sleeper. I like everybody in the Vikings offense. I think your boy Kevin – ex-Ram, great offensive play caller. And I just think, KJ Osborne, too, which I'll start on. This is a guy you can get as, your last pick in the draft, one of them. He's going, what is it? Average draft position is, 147. You get him, he's your last guy before you get a kicker in a defense, unless you're under the philosophy you take a defense like San Francisco early, which I advise against because I think you can get Baltimore late. And once Roquan Smith was traded to Baltimore, they were another animal, and I think that's a sleeper defense. But we can go into that. But if we're just looking at KJ Osborne, he had a 34 fantasy point game, 16 fantasy points, 17 fantasy points, 15 fantasy points. He was the wide receiver 7 for the last of over a 4-week span. Now there's a lot of boom bust for KJ Osborne, obviously being a wide receiver 3, but perhaps he's the wide receiver 2 if something happens with Addison. But I like all those guys. Addison as well, if he can play week 1. I saw his crisp route running in college at USC, and I love him too. So those are mine. I don't know. Thoughts before you go on?
I'm going to put in one. I'm just going to put in one.
Go do
Cam Akers, because I feel like last year he was coming off of a serious injury. He wasn't getting the full workload in that Rams offense. The Rams offense was really bad. But over the last 8 games, he averaged the 8th most fantasy points at his position, and he posted 4 straight of 100 yards from scrimmage or more. So I think with Cam Akers, that offensive line is a little bit more shored up. It's not elite. It's a little bit better now. I think he's going to be one of the focal points. Obviously with you have Cooper Kupp, but I think he's going to be one of the focal points again in that Rams offense. And I think that he's going to work his way back. He's going to be fully healthy from that Achilles injury, which did hurt him a lot. That Achilles injury, especially for running backs, is really tough. But here's the thing: he's very young. Like you guys mentioned about other guys, he's very young. So coming back from that, he'll probably come back from that a little bit better than other guys. I just really like the way he played in the last part of the season. Obviously, I watched him a lot as a Rams fan, so I think he's probably my main guy.
He is a serial fumbler, though.
He is a serial fumbler, but
I hate to say it, he's explosive.
I
but
do
he is a
understand
serial
that, but
fumbler.
that's something that you can fix. And he did have an issue finding holes too. Like there's a lot of times where the offensive line broke open holes for him, and he just did not find it. That's a lot of the reason why Sean McVay benched him for a lot of the season last year. But I think that he's going to have a comeback year. I think he's one of my breakout guys, and I think that he's going to be one of the focal points next to Cooper Kupp because he was on that Super Bowl run, and he was hurt basically. He's still recovering and still did pretty good. So I like him in that Rams offense. He's probably one of my main.
I like Devon A-Chain too for Miami. I don't know what
I love A-Chain.
Yeah,
A-Chain was probably my favorite back in the class, other than Bijan, of course.
Yeah, like A-Chain's really fast, man. He's really good. I don't know what McDaniel's going to do, but for me, when I see a guy with that much burst, that you can get him in late rounds, I think he's the starter by week 6. Perhaps
Fully
I'm
agree.
wrong.
I think Mostert or Wilson, one of them will get cut probably. I mean, the money that is being given to both of them, like you can't give that type of. Like I mentioned earlier, you can't give that type of money to running backs when you have a more dynamic, like rookie running back on a very cheap contract, So A-Chain, I think the only like way he doesn't get like the full workload by that time of year, I think, is because he's 189 pounds or whatever, like that's a struggle for when it comes to guys being bell cow backs. I love him. And I think that he can handle that workload. Like, I think that he's the exception. He did it at Texas A&M in the SEC. Ran through contact so much in the SEC. I truly think that he was like the next best running back in the class behind Bijan. So, and obviously he got an awesome landing spot with Mike McDaniel. So I'm really excited to watch.
For sure. And thoughts on my breakout players?
I mean, which one of you guys mentioned Treylon Burks? Was it?
He
both?
did.
I love Treylon.
I love
Burks.
Treylon.
Yeah, I know you love.
I'm a little
Treylon
concerned
Burks
with
too.
Hopkins though now.
Really?
A little bit. I mean, his target share was great over the second half of the season. I'm just like they don't have.
I still
who's their
think
quarterback?
he's
That's my
uber
problem.
talented. Yeah, I understand.
Like if you put him on the
Tannehill or Will
49ers,
Levis, like,
if you literally trade no one would ever do this, but if you traded Treylon Burks for Deebo Samuel, Treylon Burks would be amazing on the 49ers. Or the Eagles.
My hot take with Burks, with D-Hop going to the Titans is I wouldn't be surprised if Burks out-targeted Hopkins down the stretch. I just, do we not think D-Hop might be getting washed? Like, he's 31. I know, it's PFF grade, but his PFF grade has declined, steadily over the last 3 years.
Yeah.
And the research that I've done shows that receivers typically have a 1 year slight drop before they hit that cliff and decline heavily. And the last 2 years, I know Hopkins has battled injuries both of the last 2 years, but he's had pretty steady drops in PFF grade, which is typically a pretty good measure of how a player does. And it's pretty well correlated to fantasy production. So D-Hop was a guy who in his prime was putting up 90 PFF grade, 88 in 2020, I think. And then he dropped to 81 in 21 and then 73 last year. So I think that we could see a heavy decline coming, I don't think that it's impossible to see that. And Treylon Burks is an ascending player, 22, 23 years old and was a great receiver in college and had good games down the stretch last year. He battled injuries, so we didn't get to see him break out, but I could see a breakout this year from Burks.
And I wanted to add something about Nico Hollins before we wrap up too, because I do think he could become the wide receiver one. I know they got Woods, right? They got Woods.
Yeah, Robert Woods.
Yeah, but I mean, Woods has declined. Let's be real. He's declined steadily. Like you were just mentioning, that's another guy who's He's not even steadily. He's like this. I hate to say it. And I think Nico Hollins is a guy that when he he had a consistent like 14 fantasy point like average for like 6 weeks last year. Now he has CJ Stroud, who I don't love. I think he's talented, but I don't. I mean, that's a whole separate conversation. But I think he's talented enough where he can get Nico Hollins the ball. He's a good arm, So I mean, like he's gonna get him the ball more so than Davis Mills.
I love Collins. Yeah. I mean, I think Stroud, huge upgrade, and Stroud was a guy who like threw really well to the sidelines and to the boundaries in college. And that's Nico Collins. He's the prototypical like big X receiver, 6'4", 215, like runs well too, ran like a 4.5. And obviously like the production has been not what we wanted to see the first 2 years of his career, but it was with tough quarterback play, So bringing in CJ Stroud, like there's some excitement when it comes to Nico Collins, I think.
I wanted to ask you your thoughts on Etienne and Breece Hall, like when I brought them up. Like,
I love Breece Hall. The only problem is the ACL recovery.
Yeah,
I mean, if Breece Hall didn't tear his ACL last year, I think he would easily be like in the consideration for 1-1 right now. I think he's easily in that consideration. As you mentioned, like led the league in fantasy points per touch, like super dynamic running back, great back, phenomenal receiver, and then obviously you add Aaron Rodgers, the offense is going to be a lot better than it was last year. So I love Breece Hall. It's just I can't really get behind drafting him super high coming off the torn ACL this year. Like I think we could end up seeing missed games early in the season. I would be more of the guy who lets him struggle for the first few weeks and then goes and like talks to whoever has Breece Hall and says, hey, trade him to me cheap. He's not efficient this year. Like, let me get him. And then probably down the stretch, we're going to see him be more like the typical Breece Hall that he is. And then when it comes to Etienne, another player that I really like as a running back, like I think he's metrically one of the best running backs in the league. I hated how they used him last year. Like they didn't throw him the ball, and he's a great receiving back.
McCaffrey, bro. He's a McCaffrey clone. Yeah. Like that's. Yeah. I mean, he's not as good, but like
It killed me because he was on my team.
I feel like Travis Etienne's a superstar fantasy wise. They just aren't using him correctly. Like if the Niners had him, I just feel like Doug Peterson was just running him up the middle the whole time, and somehow he got through all the holes all the time. But why isn't he being like? Why aren't there set screens for him? Why aren't there jet sweeps for him? Why aren't there like get creative? Like that's my only. I agree with you, but I do. Yeah,
it was weird. It was weird. I think, and hopefully with drafting Bigsby, maybe they're trying to make him be the guy that takes those carries up the middle now, and they can get Etienne out in space. Hopefully, because that's just the one thing that concerns me about Etienne is they did spend day 2 capital on Tank Bigsby. So, and obviously he's not going to come take over the whole workload, but I do think that there is an intention to use him a little bit. So we'll see. And hopefully I like Tank Bigsby a lot too.
I like him, but he's not Travis Etienne.
Can I just ask you guys one thing, because you guys are really good on running backs? Jahmyr Gibbs was a kind of a controversial pick. Okay. And I wanted to see, first of all, Brandon, and then Lucas, you can go after, about Jahmyr Gibbs, because he's exciting, but you were kind of questioning
I was, pick. But the more metrically, the more I looked at him, and the more I looked at Ben Johnson, I am drafting Jahmyr Gibbs and Amon-Ra St. Brown together in almost every league. In almost every league. And here's why. I don't think there's, Amon-Ra, I would draft as high as 13, high as 13. Like, I think he could finish as the wide receiver 1. Like, I'm all in on Amon-Ra.
I just love Gibbs' ceiling.
I do as well, and I'm about to get to Gibbs, but Amon-Ra real quick.
Yeah.
One of 2 players in NFL history with a certain number of target share. I think it's like 44% or something, like in year 2 for a wide receiver. Only someone did it in like the 90s or something. Yeah, and with Ben Johnson there as an offensive coordinator, I love Amon-Ra, obviously. Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be used like Deebo Samuel. I mean, he's going to be used jet sweep. I don't even care if David Montgomery gets red zone touches. I've never been high on David Montgomery. I don't know what the hype is about David Montgomery. I've watched him run. Like, he's fine, but, like, to me, it's like...
it's improved from what they had last year, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, dude, they were using Williams too much in the red zone, personally. I mean, he wasn't, like you mentioned, he's not super talented. He was, like, snagging DeAndre Swift's touchdowns. They should have gone to DeAndre Swift, in my opinion, who I thought is far superior back to Williams. But if we're just looking at Jahmyr Gibbs, I know they drafted him high. In Alabama, I don't think he was used particularly the correct way. I think he's going to be used more as a pass-catching back for the Lions. And I think PPR-wise, he's going like 35th, 36th 6th right now. I think historically, running backs that have been taken in the top 15, every single one of them, but like 2 over the past 15 years, have finished as a top 10 running back. So Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs are probably most likely going to be finishing as top 10 running backs, which is why I love Jahmyr Gibbs in round 3, at the end of round 3, early round 4. He's on most of my fantasy teams.
Lucas?
I like Gibbs. I think he's a great running back, but the one problem is the goal line carries. Like, he's not going to get those. We know that. But he probably will get enough like receiving snaps to make up for it. Like, this is a guy that's probably going to get 80, 90 targets even. But the like Alvin Kamara comps that were thrown around a lot, the rushing touchdown part of Alvin Kamara's game, I don't think is going to translate to Jahmyr Gibbs' game. But he is a guy that, like, we could see 800, 900, maybe even 1,000 receiving yards at a point in his career, and he's going to be a guy that still scores touchdowns, whether it's through the air or breaking off like a 15, 20, 30-yard rushing touchdown, because he has that breakaway speed. He's like a 4.36 guy or something. So dude's electric.
I think what's going to happen, Lucas, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think what they're going to do, Ben Johnson's eventually going to use Gibbs in the second half of the season in the red zone. I truly believe that. I don't think it's sustainable. Montgomery's always hurt, and when he's healthy, it's like, his explosiveness is just not. I've just never gotten the hype about David Montgomery. Like, Fields was like a one-man team last year, man. Like, running wise, like throwing wise, and by the way, I love Justin Fields in round 5, 6, 7. It's a hot take because he can't really pass yet, but like 1,200 rushing yards. My biggest concern is if he gets injured, like Lamar. Like, with DJ Moore, Fields, and
I like the Bears, man.
My strategy has been like Herbert, Lawrence, Fields, or Jackson in that round 5. I don't know. I mean, obviously you can wait for Tua, Geno. Like, those are 2 great guys. Right. Goff, I think, is underrated. Daniel Jones, kind of. Look, people love it, Daniel Jones. I still question the passing, but running-wise, he's going to get fantasy points. I love drafting a QB in round 5. What are your thoughts there, Lucas? Last question. I'll ask.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good options there, like you said. Like, there's the running threats, Lamar and Fields, and then there's Herbert and Lawrence, who are a little more pocket passers with mobility. Like, I think Lawrence takes another big step in year 3. When they added Calvin Ridley. So there's more weapons for him to throw to now. I mean, that was the problem in year 1. There was just nobody there to throw to. It was just dysfunctional with Urban Meyer. But he's kind of like settling in well now. I think we're going to see another big jump in year 3 from Trevor. Herbert, all his weapons are healthy again. That's when he struggled last year, was when Mike Williams and Keenan Allen were hurt. It was like Josh Palmer was his receiver 1, and then he was throwing to DeAndre Carter.
People forget Herbert was a QB 2 years ago.
Yeah, guy's a great quarterback, I mean, has possibly the best arm in the league, I mean, it's up there with Mahomes and Allen, arm talent-wise. So, yeah, I mean, there's so many great options there in the 5th round when it comes to a QB. I mean, the running options are typically like higher ceiling guys because they have the rushing yards and the rushing touchdowns. But it might be a little safer to go with the passers, a little less likely to get hurt possibly. But there are studies out there that say that you're just as likely to get hurt as a pocket QB, taking hits in the pocket than you are as a runner. So who knows, really? I think they're all great options.
I think Fields similar to Lamar though. Fields, like I think Lamar. When did Lamar start getting hurt? Year 4 or 5?
Yeah.
I mean, I think like Fields has a few more years before they start attacking his legs and it starts to affect him. I also think Fields is bigger than Lamar. By the way, he's 6'3", 230. Fields, like, he's a big boy. Lamar's what, 6'1"? Like,
I think Lamar's 6'3", but he's a little skinnier, I think.
Skinnier.
Like, he's just not as built.
Yeah. I think that's a difference. I think Fields. Sounds crazy. I think he could win an MVP. Like, if he learns how to pass, like, at a higher level.
If DJ Moore can really, like, take him to the top, I mean, I think the arm talent is definitely there for Fields. I think Fields can be, like, he was a phenomenal passer at Ohio State, but he had elite weapons. He was throwing to Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Jackson Smith, and Jigba.
I also don't think I don't think Eberflus can coach any offense, in my opinion. But
it's a weird setup there. It's a weird setup with him being the head coach. So. We'll see. I mean, they made a decent enough jump in year 2 with Fields, I think. Like, I think that there can be another jump this year. So
I think the Lions for sure win that division though, and that's a whole different conversation. But I wanted to ask you this too. Like I wanted to tell you this too. The first article I ever wrote on my Substack was why the Niners need to draft Justin Fields with the 3rd overall pick. And I stand by it. Like, I don't know why they went with – I like Trey Lance. I think Trey Lance has the upside of an NFL MVP, but he's not going to get the reps to ever get there. You know? So, I mean, it's a sad situation. I think Fields would have been a better fit in Kyle's system. I feel like he could have done more because of his accuracy that he had at Ohio State. And I think, Lance is more of like a boom-bust guy. Last thing I'll say here, and I know it's a little off topic, Trey Lance, do you take a flyer on him super late?
I don't know. I don't think I would.
What about you?
I would.
So I have him in my dynasty league, and the story actually. So I had Justin Fields, and going into last year, I was a little more out on Fields because of the crazy struggles that he had in year one. And Trey Lance, we just hadn't really seen. So I kind of did like a Fields for Lance swap and got Brandon Ayuk in the deal, and have been very high on Trey Lance, but it's hurting me now, So I kind of
look.
All I can do is hope for Lance to get the
your evaluation is correct. I mean, as a Niners fan, I saw Jalen Hurts ascension, and I think we could see a similar ascension if Lance gets the snaps. Like Lance could be a superstar. I think everything's there for him to be an NFL superstar. He has Josh Allen's strength almost. Obviously he's quicker. He's not as he's not as built as a linebacker, but he's strong, 6'4", 225, 230. He can run really fast. He has an electric arm. I mean, he's all the intangibles to become an elite quarterback. And Kyle Shanahan just loves the limited upside guys. He's infatuated with Kirk Cousins, Jimmy Garoppolo, Brock Purdy. And I like Brock Purdy. And Purdy,
I was going to ask you about that. Well, both of you.
I like Purdy, but is Purdy ever going to win you? I feel like if they let Lance, with that talent around him, let him adjust. You lose a few games early on. I don't care. If Trey Lance stays healthy by the end of this season, and certainly at the end of next season, you could see a dynasty with the Niners if Lance can get to where he wants to be. That's my thinking.
I agree. I agree with that take. I think the upside's crazy with Lance. It's just Kyle Shanahan just loves the distributors, because he has the weapons for it. And I do think that Lance will get an opportunity this year. Brock Purdy, I had the same surgery that he had, the UCL with the internal brace. It took me 14 months to come back, and that's for baseball, which is obviously different than football. But Purdy had that surgery in March, right? So that's he's 4 months out of surgery now. There's no shot that he can feel good playing right now.
I know too. I haven't had UCL. I don't think I throw hard enough yet for UCL surgery, 93, 94. Usually got to throw 98. But no, it's a lie. But that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Perhaps every pitcher. This is off topic. Gets 2 UCL surgeries in their career now. Painter's getting his first. Painter's going to get a second one by 3, a Uri will get one. They all get one. It sucks. It sucks. Everyone's throwing harder. That's a whole different conversation. But Purdy, I agree with you, dude. There's no way I see Purdy coming back even by week 6.
People are saying that he might be ready by
He's
week 2.
not going to be ready, dude. He's not going to be ready.
I think that maybe we could see him play a game and throw 20 passes, and take it easy, and then his elbow will be locked up for 6 days, and then he just takes the pain meds, and goes out and wears it the next day. But that's a problem for him going forward for the future.
Yeah, I was going to say, what is the upside for that when you have? They just signed Sam Darnold and they have Trey Lance. The
thing is, Kyle Shanahan's such an elite play caller where even if Trey Lance throws the interceptions early on, like we saw in that Chicago game, which was a bad example by the way because it was muddy and that's
a hurricane.
It's a terrible evaluation. I look at the game as rookie year against Houston, where he won them that big game. He was excellent in that game. And I know the Steelers are a good team. They play him week 1. That's a hard-nosed team. Let him go through growing pains. Yeah. It's not like it's not like the Niners are going to miss the playoffs, okay?
Yeah,
they're so good that even if they had a raccoon there at quarterback, they'd win 10
but this
games.
is my thing. With a team that's going all in to win now, do you really want to have a project at quarterback?
Yes, because your core is still young enough where you can win next year, the year after that, and the year after that.
There's no guarantees in the NFL.
No, there is no guarantees. All I know is I know we're a little bit off topic of fantasy, but Brock Purdy is not going to go in against Patrick Patrick Mahomes and win you a Super Bowl.
No. I didn't say that, but I'm just
Trey
saying,
Lance could. Like,
who's
that's my
the guy that has proven to get you to where you were going. Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy was that
Brock
guy.
Purdy was never, even if he was healthy, going to beat the Eagles at Lincoln Memorial. Ever.
I disagree.
He's never.
I disagree.
He's never going to.
I disagree.
I'm just saying, like, Lucas agrees with me. The upside that the Eagles look at the Eagles with Foles, with Wentz, and then they're like, okay, we'll trust Hurts. They didn't even like Hurts. They didn't want to draft him.
I know.
They didn't even want him, and they drafted him, and he turns out
they were playing Carson Wentz.
And by the way, Jalen Hurts, as good of a player as he is not. He's not 75% as talented as Trey Lance, in my opinion.
He doesn't have the same arm strength that Lance has. They're similar athleticism. And I've always been high on Jalen Hurts. You can ask Grant in our group chat. We have, like, literally as soon as he got drafted in 2020, we have an Eagles fan in our group chat. I was telling him, dude, congrats on Jalen Hurts. Like, he's going to end up being the starter. This was when Wentz was still, like, the guy there. I told him, hey, Hurts is going to be your guy. Like, I'm so jealous. I wish that the Saints would have drafted Jalen Hurts. And he's with the Eagles now, almost winning MVP, bringing him to the Super Bowl, So
that's great.
He's a beast, and Trey Lance can be that too.
I'm just trying to tell Grant, and I think you agree with me, like, you need to it's all about risk. Do you want to keep losing in the NFC title game, or do you want to take it to the next level? Because the Eagles were going to win 8 games for 10 straight years if they didn't take a chance on Hurt, Like, maybe 9 perhaps. And this year they'll struggle, don't get me wrong, because they have a tough schedule. Like, the Eagles are not going to win, 14 games. They'll win probably 11, even with that tough schedule. But the Niners, yes, if you start Brock Purdy, let's say he's healthy, you win 14 games. Cool. You have the 1 seed. Cool. But can you go win a Super Bowl against Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen?
Yeah, maybe. With that
Perhaps. But from what I've seen as a fan, and us choking every single year when we should have a Super Bowl ring.
It's good to say that in hindsight, though.
I don't care.
Like, if Brock Purdy was healthy in the NFC Championship,
it doesn't matter. They were already losing when he was healthy.
I don't care. I think they would have had a good chance to win that game.
Well,
that's just my
I think
opinion.
the game started off crooked with that call that was a catch on 4th down. That would have completely shifted the game.
One more thing. I want to ask you guys about one more quarterback, Anthony Richardson, because you and I are very high on him. Lucas, I don't know if we talked about
Lucas
Anthony
probably
Richardson.
isn't high on him because he's an abysmal completion percentage passer. But I'll say this before Lucas goes.
Because I think he's one of the most athletic QBs in the league already.
I think he's one of the best athletes in the world, pure athletes. But, I think, Richardson
in terms of we're talking fantasy
in a dynasty league, Richardson's the guy I want because I think in 2 years he's a superstar. I think he has the ability.
He's joining a team that's coached by Shane Steichen, who just about Jalen Hurts. He developed Jalen Hurts. So
I like Richardson's up this year. He's going to struggle, dude, immensely. Okay. I think probably. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I think he has enough arm strength and rushing ability where he'll improvise and he'll be able to get some done. Okay. But if we're expecting him to be amazing.
Well, just his numbers on the ground will get you points. I mean,
he's a good late round pick, but he's also.
No, I'm not saying
How many interceptions do you think he throws, Lucas? 15?
Probably around there. Yeah, I'm all in on Richardson too. From a potential standpoint, I just exactly like you said, Brandon, in Dynasty. I would have loved to get this guy on my team. He's got obviously one of the best arms in the NFL with. He's the fastest QB in the league right now, probably coming in as a 21-year-old. That's the prime of your career when it comes to running. So I love Richardson, but as you mentioned, it's year 1. He just completed less than 50% of his passes at Florida. So I don't think we're going to see great passing efficiency, but I think that he could develop that. And as Grant was saying, it's Shane Steichen, and he just turned Jalen Hurts into what he did. So. It's the perfect situation, I think, for Richardson being there with Shane Steichen. I was going to compare him kind of to it could be a similar rookie year to Justin Fields, how we saw him throw 5 interceptions in the game with the Bears his rookie year. But with Richardson, he at least has some solid weapons. They have Michael Pittman to throw to. They have a phenomenal running game with Jonathan Taylor. Yeah. They have Alec Pierce, who could be really good with Richardson, being a deep threat like he is. And then they drafted Josh Downs, who I love, from North Carolina.
Josh Downs is really good, actually.
Yeah.
He's really
so
good.
Richardson, I think that he could be better as a passer than Fields was in year 1, just because it's a better situation, probably a better coaching situation too. Matt Nagy was not helpful for Fields. So I'm looking to take Richardson probably late in redraft right now, as my QB2 right now.
That makes sense because he has upside. I think Lance and Richardson, like taking a flyer on those guys late is like probably the best value you're going to get, like for upside wise, if you have a solid QB1. I agree. I think people are going to really. Though that's a take. Like you thought Richardson should have gone 1.
Yeah.
I said I still probably would have went Bryce Young just because I think like upside, sure, whatever. But I mean, just to even at 5'10", the ability for him to read defenses and make adjustments is uncanny. It's like Mahomes-esque. But Richardson was my second quarterback on the board. I'm not going to lie. And I wouldn't have been mad at Carolina for rolling with the upside. Because I think Richardson has the highest upside of any of those quarterbacks. But I think those are good options. Anything else you want to add, Lucas? Any hot takes for the fantasy football season before we wrap up here?
Or
I don't think so. I think,
mention. Just any players.
I think pretty much everything that I was looking to talk about got covered. Maybe when it comes to Zach Charbonnet,
Oh yeah.
I hate his landing spot there with the Seahawks, considering it's taking away from Kenneth Walker, who I have in Dynasty. I had to draft Charbonnet this year though because I need the handcuff, and Charbonnet I think is a very good running back. Like I think if anything happens to Kenneth Walker this year, Charbonnet basically becomes Joe Mixon in that offense, which has an ascending like young run blocking O-line, and it's just a good offense in general. There's going to be a lot of touchdown opportunities. Guy was a great receiver in college. He's big. He can be a goal line back. He'll get touchdowns. And then he plays the Rams and Cardinals twice. And those are like they're potentially the two worst run defenses in the league, I think. So like down the stretch, if something happens to Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet could win you your league.
Absolutely. I'll say this. I've seen Charbonnet play for years. I mean, it was a Michigan transfer, 5-star recruit, by the way. He was the number 1 running back in the country entering college. Transferred to UCLA. I think Charbonnet had the ability, if he went somewhere else, to be a 1,000-yard rusher his rookie season. Like he's that talented. And like Joe Mixon, I feel like I've kind of been too harsh on Joe Mixon because he was second in expected fantasy points last year. That's another guy that I feel like last year I was like, do not draft him 11 or 12. And it turns out I was right because he was the RB10. I was like,
actually.
Yeah, I was like, do not draft him. Like if he's in your second round, like late, that's fine. Now his ADP's on Sleeper probably like 33. On Fantasy Pros, it's 45, which is ridiculous. ESPN, it's 31. But I feel like that's kind of low, Lucas, like about a guy that was second in expected fantasy points. I don't love him, but he's in a really good offense.
I do like Joe Mixon. It's just I think there's kind of the threat of that suspension with what happened with the aggravated menacing, like waving a gun in some lady's face. If not for that, like I'm sure his ADP would be a lot higher right now. I don't know what we're gonna see with Mixon. I mean, there was talk that the Bengals were gonna cut him. He ended up restructuring his contract to stay there. So like we know that when he's there now, he is the like full 3-down back. Which it's good. Volume's king in fantasy for running backs. Like you want the touches, the opportunities. So Mixon, like if he plays a full season, he's a low tier RB1, I think, high tier RB2, in that like RB10 to like RB15 range. So yeah, if Mixon isn't getting suspended, like if he's for sure not getting suspended, I'm 100% drafting him where his ADP is.
What about Chubb?
Oh, another, like, probably the best running back in the league, I think. Like, as a runner in general.
As a true rusher,
Yeah, he's a stud. And I think the fact that they didn't bring Kareem Hunt back, like, Jerome Ford is the RB2 right now, and, like, maybe he takes some of those, like, receiving touches there. And Nick Chubb hasn't gotten a whole lot in his career, but I think if there ever is a time, it's going to be this year that he gets.
What about the line? You like the line this year?
Yeah, it's good. I mean, I can't think of any like losses they had on that O-line, and it's been good. I think the offense is just going to be better in general than last year with Watson probably being good again. We'll see. He was pretty bad last year, but he was rusty.
That's another thing. Everyone's like, draft Watson in round 6 or 7. Are you kidding me? From what I saw last year, like he's going to be better, of course. I think the guy that might be good right away, and people are like, oh, he's going to have a Watson type year, is Ridley. And I think Ridley's going to actually be a fantasy football league winner. Like
people forget
at his average draft position. No, he's never been like he was overdrafted a few years back. Like he's never finished higher than I think wide receiver 15 or 13 or 14. You're getting him at like in the 6th round. That's like great value for a guy. There's like no doubt. It's like Jerry Jeudy. Like the jury's been out on him. on Judy for like a few years, but I think this is the year with Sean Payton, and like Russell Wilson's probably gonna have a better year. I'm drafting Judy in round 6 as well. Like those are two guys I'm like looking at.
Terry McLaurin.
McLaurin's solid, but I mean, it's Sam Howell as his quarterback. You love Sam Howell. Your
Sam Howell. He's got
affinity
that
for
dog
Sam
in
Howell.
him.
Yeah, he's got that dog. In him.
That's my analysis. You guys are giving all these stats. My analysis, dog.
So you like Purdy?
He's got the
Purdy
X
over
dog.
Lance.
The
then.
X dog, huh?
Purdy over Lance then.
Yeah, that's why.
He does.
I like guys that got
Yeah.
His favorite word, Lucas, moxie. These guys
Yeah,
have
Purdy
moxie.
does have moxie. He looks like Purdy could play for the Miami Heat for sure. Like he's got that like underdog moxie thing. I will say this. Correct me if I'm wrong. And we're probably going to split this up into 2 podcasts
I know,
because
we're
it's
going-
been so long,
we're
which
going
is fine.
crazy
It's
here.
but more content the better. But we're almost done. I wanted to ask you because I'm curious about the Raiders, and this is my thoughts on this. Jimmy Garoppolo, if he comes back healthy, which is still they've been keeping that on wraps.
I don't know what's
I don't know
going on
what's going on. I mean, they say he's going to play, but you never know. He didn't really have an introductory presser. I've watched him for years. He's a slant passer. He's a get the ball out in 2 seconds.
He'd go good with Lucas's boy, Michael Thomas.
Yeah, he would. Devontae Adams' value, and I hate to say it because he's so talented, but Devontae Adams is a long ball guru. He can go to the sideline and he'll do that for Jimmy, and he's so talented he'll still produce. But Hunter Renfrow. Dun, 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 dun,
Oh my
dun,
God!
dun,
Last
dun,
year,
dun.
that was one of
Doesn't
my
matter.
worst picks.
This year, Hunter Renfro's volume is going to go up because he's a guy that can just run those
Disappointed me
slants. Am
so
I wrong?
much.
I agree with you on the Adams with Jimmy G. Josh McDaniels is he's trying to do like the Patriot way there. Like they want to take the deep shots out of the game and just give it to their like guys, the weapons. Like short of the sticks. And Adams. There's a point in his career where he was doing that pretty well with Rodgers. Like he was a very good slant receiver with Rodgers. But last year with Derek Carr, the ADOT went way up. It was like the highest ADOT of his career, and he was very good as a result. He was a stud when it came to the deep ball. So Adams, I think there is going to be some regression from last year when it comes to his fantasy points per game. He's also getting old. He's like 30 now, maybe 31. So I think we could see that with Devontae Adams. It's not necessarily Hunter Renfrow that I like. It's Jacoby Myers. I think Jacoby Myers.
Yeah, Myers.
They gave him like 3 years, 33 mil or something like that. Really underrated slot receiver, and obviously he's very familiar with Josh McDaniels' system. He's going to be that underneath guy that's just always open, just sitting down in the soft spots. He'll get targets, he'll get catches. Maybe not a ton of big plays, but I like Jacoby Myers a lot. I think he's super underrated. I think that he deserved the money he got.
I think both of those guys are going to have good years with Jimmy G because they can produce in the slot and they can go like underneath on slant routes, underneath routes, screen routes. Jacoby Myers, by the way, was in an abysmal offense last year. So, the Patriots don't do any favors with offensive players. That's how good Ramondre is Ramondre balls out and you're like,
that's Lucas's boy.
That's my
Ramondre's that
favorite
dude.
player.
Hopefully
Yeah.
Leonard Fournette does not sign with the Patriots because Ramondre then becomes a round 2 guy. That's a guy who...
It's always like they put somebody in front of Ramondre. And don't let him,
By the way, you want to
awesome.
hear a stat, listeners, about Ramondre Stevenson? Top 5 in target share for running backs. It's top 5. And he's an excellent pass catching back. He's explosive. They use him in the red zone. There was that time when people were like Damian Harris, and it was like, no, get that guy out. Put him on the sidewalk. Ramondre's 10 times better. And I just think getting Leonard Fournette makes 0 sense for the Patriots. I don't know. That's just
I agree. I think Fournette is cooked, though, to be honest. I think he was the least efficient back in the league last year, and the Buccaneers O-line wasn't very good, but yeah, I think Fournette's not going to do much to Ramondre. I think he would probably be a cut candidate. We'll see if he would even make it through camp if they signed him. They worked out Darrell Henderson too, so it's pretty clear that they're looking for. It's pretty clear that they're looking for a veteran that's kind of washed. I'm not sure how much they trust Pierre Strong and Kevin Harris.
That's like signing Marcus Morris. Getting one of those guys. It's old 35-year-old backs.
Listen. No disrespect to Darrell Henderson because he did a pretty good job last year when Cam Akers was ass, but Daryl Henderson, if you're bringing Daryl Henderson as this kind of generational guy that's going to turn around your running back room, let's relax.
I'm sorry. And then something.
Sorry, Lucas. We just roasted Daryl.
Sorry, Daryl Henderson. If he's listening, we'll have him on for a guest. We'll have him.
He's not going to want to anymore.
How do you know? He'll probably want to defend himself.
You know who we need to get? Ramondre Stevenson, because you know why? He's got that dog in him. He
has moxie. He's a
so
patriot.
Good. Very good player.
He's great. How high are you drafting him this year?
Man, I don't like. It does scare me being in a Bill Belichick offense. Like it does scare me. And Ramondre, I think that he was slightly over targeted last year just because of the O-line was horrendous. Mac Jones was running for his life all the time, and he had to check down so much. So, I think he's going to be able to throw deeper a little bit this year, which could hurt Ramondre a little bit. But he didn't get a ton of touchdowns last year, and I think that the touchdowns will be there for him this year. I mean, guys like 235, 240 pounds, and he's a phenomenal runner. I mean, runs through contact so well, super hard to bring down, averaged 5 yards per carry last year. I'm telling you, this Ramondre, I fell in love with his game in the preseason, his rookie year. I watched him week 1 of the preseason, I think. He was a 4th-round pick, had no idea who he was. I ran 9 times in a game for 140 and 2 touchdowns or something. And I was like, this dude is a beast. It was our first year of our dynasty league. So I was like, all right, I need to grab him off the waiver wire right now and just stash him. And I did. And now he's a beast. So I love him. I think he's such a stud.
If there are any NBA fans out there, Ramondre Stevenson is like Austin Reeves. It's like this guy that you remember I was telling you, I saw him in Summer League and I was just like, he's him.
And Austin Reeves is
saw Ramondre.
Austin Reeves is still kind of underrated. If you think about it.
Yeah. Just like Ramondre.
I think
such a solid
I don't even think it's an overstatement that Austin Reeves is a top 50 NBA player. Yeah. I think that's like most people that watch basketball would see that. What I will say though, I kind of feel that way about Elijah Mitchell. The first time I saw him run in the NFL, I'm like, this guy's freaking good. And it's so sad that they have McCaffrey now because Mitchell, yes, he's injury prone. But
I don't think it's sad for you, but it's sad for the
No,
opponents.
it's sad for Mitchell because Mitchell is actually really good. And that's a good guy to draft late, in my opinion, because I do think he gets some value there. Players to stay away from before we go, in my opinion, correct me if I'm wrong, they don't have a quarterback. Chris Godwin, Mike Evans.
Oh, God.
Even Rachaad White. I like Rachaad White, but anybody on the Buccaneers I'm staying far away from. They do not have a quarterback. Thoughts?
It'll be super interesting. I mean, so here's a really funny parallel when it comes to the Buccaneers. All right. So last year, before the season, everybody was looking at DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, and they were like, they have no quarterback. The Seahawks offense is going to be terrible. I thought the same thing. I thought Seahawks are going to be horrendous. They're going to be one of the worst teams in the league.
Me too.
Made that trade.
Their offensive coordinator, Dave Canales, is now with the Buccaneers. So the Buccaneers go take the Seahawks offensive coordinator to be their new OC, and he comes into a very similar situation where they had 2 stud receivers and a not great quarterback situation. I don't know. I mean, I could see Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, at least one of them, being good this year still. The thing for Mike Evans that I love, Baker Mayfield, big downfield thrower, and he was not like that last year. Last year he was a check down machine because it was Christian McCaffrey. He was playing with Christian McCaffrey, and then he went to play with the Rams and just didn't know the system, so he just checked down a lot. But with the Browns, he threw downfield so much. And the thing for the Buccaneers, that's Mike Evans and Chris Godwin's sweet spots, downfield receivers. And Chris Godwin, the last 3 years with Tom Brady, his ADOT just dropped every year because Brady just wasn't really a downfield thrower anymore at that stage of his career. I mean, if you remember, Chris Godwin with Jameis Winston, guy was catching downfield seam routes all the time, making huge plays. So I don't think that it is out of the realm of possibility to see something like that again from Godwin this year with Mayfield or Evans. I mean, Evans is getting older, but yeah, there's also the possibility that it's just a terrible Baker Mayfield offense. You never know. So I'm not reaching to get either of those guys, but if they're falling, I'll take a flyer on one of them probably.
But you would take more over either of them, DJ?
It is a similar situation, I would say, when it comes to like an unproven pocket passer. The thing that DJ Moore has going for him is that he's the clear alpha, like there's nobody that's going to be taking targets away from DJ Moore. So probably I'd probably be taking Moore over both of them. Yeah.
Love it. All right, I think that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much, Lucas, for coming
Lucas, you're
on.
the
It's
best,
been the
man. That was
Fantasy
awesome.
Files podcast.
Yeah, it was fun.
Thank you guys for listening, and it's your co-host, Brandon Deutsch, Gramona, guest Lucas, and thank you guys so much.